All right, so we are back to wearables on this episode of the Fitfile podcast. So we have a new watch from Polar. So this is the Street X, and I'd argue that this is probably one of the most interesting devices Polar's come out with in a long time.
On paper, yes, totally on paper.
It's particularly interesting just because I think they're aiming for a untapped market, or at least a market that they haven't necessarily targeted before with this watch.
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting in terms of them realizing, as I think they've done in a few of their other recent releases, that they can no longer command a super premium price for their products. As we saw with like the whole Grid X series and to a certain degree the V3 as well. And this is nice because they're basically saying, hey, we want to go for $249, which is very, very affordable, even less, as we can talk about in just a second. And, in introducing new things like the flashlight, right? And that is legitimately cool to see Polar doing that at this price point. I like that. Let's talk about kind of the pros and cons and choices they've made otherwise, though.
Yeah, and I think that this device, I would put it in the same boat as the Polar Loop, where it has a ton of potential, where they are looking at, kind of grabbing some market share and attracting new customers to the Polar platform. But potential is, I think, a key word with this device.
In multiple
sure.
ways.
So before we get into the details of this new watch, so just a reminder, we publish the Fitfile podcast on Spotify podcast, Apple podcast, as well as YouTube. And on the YouTube side of things, dealer's choice, whether you want to see the video version or the audio version. And if you do like these episodes, definitely leave a review on any of those platforms, as well as like drop a comment into YouTube. We definitely appreciate that feedback from you all.
Yep, absolutely. So where do we want to start off on this first? Do you want to start off with like what's good on it? What's unique on it?
I think that we should start out with probably this. Let's start with the style first, because I think that that's something new for Polar, and it's certainly something that has increased in popularity a lot in recent years. So basically, in terms of style, this is like full-on Casio G-Shock retro style.
Yep.
And there obviously are comparisons from the Garmin Instinct to the Casio G-Shock style, but I would argue that this is way more G-Shock than even the Instinct.
I think so, yeah. I think the Instinct has more Phoenix flair into it versus this is just more direct Casio. Not as like chunky though as a Casio. I think like if you look at a G-Shock like that as just like all the chunk, this, to me, I would say a couple things. One, I think this looks way better in person than it does on Polar's renders. Like their computer-generated renders don't do it any favors at all. I think this actually looks a lot better in person. I bought the black one. You bought the white one, I think.
Yep,
right?
I bought the white one.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I don't mind the look of it overall. I think it's fine. I would say my only one thing I don't like is the top bezel. To me, seems unfinished. Where it's got the north, south, east, west. It just seems like they just put the 4 directions on there and then forgot to finish whatever styling they were doing, compared to like the Coros Nomad, which I feel like has much more style to the overall design itself. But still, I don't have any problems with this. I think anytime you're talking a Casio G-Shock, Instinct, whatever you want to call it, watch, you're definitely getting into the realm where some people love it and some people will hate it, right? Like there's very little middle ground there, I think.
Oh yeah, totally. And to give Polar a ton of credit, they put out some really nice looking hardware, like extremely nice looking hardware, like their Polar Grit X2 Pro. That thing's like one of my favorite looking watches ever, actually. So, and I would have to agree where I'm equally impressed with the look on this, and I'm glad they didn't completely knock off an Instinct with this watch. I'm glad they kind of came up with, I don't want to say something new, but something different than a Garmin Instinct. It is slightly different. It's certainly going after that same retro kind of style and market, but I do believe it's different than a Nomad or an Instinct on that.
No, I agree. They've definitely found their own way there.
Now, something that is very similar to the Instinct, this also has a built-in flashlight, which is like simply awesome, basically. So at this point, this is actually the least expensive watch, I believe, that you can get with the flashlight. Yeah. So basically Amazfit has a flashlight, Suunto has a flashlight, and then Garmin introduced the flashlight. I mean, I guess depending on how you look at it. And for a reference on that, we actually did an episode on Suunto versus Garmin and Garmin versus Suunto in a lawsuit. So that's actually debating the flashlight issue right there. And we'll have that link down in the description below. But at this point, yeah, this is the least expensive option when it comes to a flashlight watch.
Yep, and I think they did a pretty good job of the implementation on this at like a hardware level. So to turn it on, you're just going to simply one tap it, that turns it on, and then you can go down into the 4 levels of white brightness and the 1 red LED, and then tap it again to turn it off. My only slight complaint there is that it's different at night compared to the daytime. So at night, it's a double tap to turn on, but a single tap to turn off, which is kind of funny. And then in a workout, it's a different again. Like it's not consistent versus I feel like in the case of Garmin Suunto and Amazfit, it's consistent across the board, right? You're just, whatever the action is, it's the same everywhere. And I feel like a number of times I've accidentally turned off or on the flashlight when I didn't mean to. And overall, though, I like it. It's not quite as bright as either Suunto or Garmin's flashlight. I wouldn't say like half the brightness, but it's not as bright, not as much throw either.
I think it's still totally usable though. I don't think it's like dim by any means.
Correct. That's the thing I was going to get. Like it has not mattered to me at all. Like if I think about where I use a flashlight, it is hotel rooms at night, it is finding something under a couch. It's like the random things around your house. Yes, you might use it in a tent somewhere, or if you somehow like are hiking along and forgot your flashlight or whatever the case is. But just like with Garmin and Suunto and Amazfit, you can't realistically use it for trail running at night, right? It's just, it's not as much throw. You're not going to have enough distance. I used it one night on sidewalks running, and it was fine enough to be able to see that there was like things on the sidewalk, but not, I wouldn't have wanted to do like high speed intervals with it. But otherwise, I'm totally fine with it.
But talking about the UI and the interface, so I think that we could probably just like go straight into that at this point. So with the UI and interface on here, so I think this is where things start to take a bit of a turn with this device. So basically the UI on here on the watch itself, there's kind of like two viewpoints on this. So, you know, we have our viewpoint in the sense that we've been reviewing Polar watches for well over a decade, you know. So, you know, we've seen their UI evolve and, well, not evolve over the years as well. And the UI on here is relatively similar to basically stuff that we reviewed many, many generations ago on Polar watches. So for us, it feels very, very dated. And, you know, for somebody like coming in new to the Polar ecosystem, which I believe that this watch is trying to attract a new customer, you may not feel that staleness with the UI, but there are quirks, like you were saying, like with the UI where there's like inconsistent experiences throughout. And those are pretty frustrating.
No, I agree. I think this unit shares the Polar OS, as it's called. So it's on all of the V3 units and the Grid X2 series as well. So basically, you know, Polar Vantage V3, Polar Vantage M3, this watch, Grid X2, X2 Pro. And the idea behind that was they would have one common operating system. And just like Apple, I think Apple's really the best example here, to be able to update it and have those updates go to all watches at the same time, right? So the idea that they can add new features more quickly and all that kind of stuff. Except ultimately, we haven't seen that happen at all over the last year and a half. And so all of the ideas around that and be able to implement new features means that hasn't manifested itself in any meaningful way for end users. So when I look at this watch, like you said, it's the same basic dated UI that Polar's had for almost a decade now in some capacity or another. Yes, I'm sure they are probably screaming saying, yes, but we moved an icon here or there or something like that. So there are certain things, like when you go to the start menu now for a sport mode, you'll see that there's a couple rearrangements there. Good job, Polar. But that's it. Like, I don't know how else to be more kind about this than that. Like when we're looking at their competitors right now, and maybe this is jumping ahead a bit too much, but that's all right. We're going to go with it. So if we look at their competitors, what they're doing around quarterly updates, and I'm talking all of them now, like we're seeing Suunto and Coros and Garmin and Amazfit even has started getting into this too, and delivering these quarterly update packages. They are delivering multiple times more things in a single quarter than Polar has done in the last year and a half. And when Polar does something, it is so minor at this point, right? It's like, oh, we've added pin code unlock, right? Like, cool, I guess.
It's a pretty short list every time I see an update come around, and I think it's one of those like, all right, so what kind of expectations are you going to have? Because I look at the Reddit forums, when in the Polar Reddit forums, and it's cool because I think there are a lot of Polar users in there who are very excited about some of those changes because I think they're, nice usability changes and nice to haves in there. But
Mhm.
all right, if you're a Polar user, then, getting some of those smaller things that are probably fundamental on some other devices, maybe that's exciting. But, again, it's like if you compare it with the competition, that's where it gets really tough.
And that's where I think they're positioning us watch as, I mean, they leaned real heavy into the urban street 20 something that's like on a
Uh-huh.
skateboard and jumping off walls, right?
Totally.
And it's funny because Polar's gone back to that well in product presentations for so many other products like the Ignite, the Unite watch, now this. And I think while we made fun of Koros a little bit for the Koros Nomad fishing angle, right? And you're like, wait,
Hmm.
what? Where's the fish coming from all of a sudden, right? At least Koros knew it was an outdoorsy watch, right?
Hmm.
Versus like this screams outdoorsy to me. It doesn't scream like urban bar trendy, right? Like, because that's, if we look at how this is positioned from a feature standpoint, we just talked about that newer generation, if that's what they're targeting, which is what they've very clearly stated they're targeting. I think so much of this will feel incredibly dated to them versus an AMOLED with a much cleaner UI like we'd see on a lot of other watches.
I have a little bit different take on who this watch is targeted for in terms of the demographic. I mean, I think it looks outdoor and I don't want to say it screams outdoor, but it certainly has that like more rugged look to it and
Yep.
whatnot. But in terms of the G Shocks I see out there, there's a couple different levels of G-Shock, by the
Yeah.
way. It's like there's, the more budget-friendly G-Shocks around like 150 to $250, which I think this is more modeled after versus like there's some very expensive G-Shock watches which are awesome looking and are
Yep.
definitely like super super premium. So I think this is aiming for that more budget level G-Shock. And this is probably jumping ahead again, but in terms of capturing that market and what a new customer would be looking for and expecting in a watch, this is where I find a lot of similarities to the Polar Loop, where I think with the Polar Loop, they were trying to attract a lot of new customers to the Polar ecosystem. And once people started to use that ecosystem, the honeymoon's over sort of thing going on there.
Yeah, I think there was very little honeymooning. Yeah, I think to me, I feel like this watch would have been ripe for having it been on Wear OS, right? Going back to
Oh,
Polar's watches
oh,
from years
that's
ago
interesting.
or the Sunto
Sure.
7 and et cetera, where again, I'm just looking at their marketing. Their marketing is 100% dark alley on a skateboard, right? That is what they have marketed almost everything on their site towards. And to me, this would have been a great opportunity for them to develop a Polar app on Wear OS and try that again. Because I think when Polar did Wear OS years ago, with the M600, I believe it was, they were too early in the cycle for Polar. Because back then, the battery life for Wear OS was dismal. Now it's like mildly acceptable for some endurance cases. And
Mhm.
so I would say like now I think is a time to go back to that well and say, you know what? Maybe Wear OS makes sense because that gets him back in the game on things like payments and offline music and all the stuff that that generation of people is looking for. I would also point out, by the way, that I don't think there's any like real clear definition of what that generation means in the grand scheme of watches. People of all ages buy all sorts of different types of watches, but
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I'm just looking at what, again, Polar has highlighted in their marketing, in their site, in their press materials as what they are targeting.
So, going back to the outdoor watch sort of thing, we should probably talk about the actual sports performance on this. So, oh, oh, look at you. This has all the normal, sport capabilities like, it can track your heart rate and it has GPS for tracking outdoor activities and
Does it?
performance. Go ahead. Go
Does it
ahead.
really?
I mean, it has, as you put it, those features on paper.
But actually, before we talk about accuracy, we need to talk about precision, in particular Precision Fuel and Hydration, which is the sponsor of this episode.
I like what you did there.
So both myself, I know it. I was really excited about that one. Yeah. So both myself and my wife have been using Precision Fuel and Hydration products for our training and racing for a number of years now. That's including their gels as well as their chews, pretty much all of their stuff actually. But not just us, also pro teams like Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, etc., as well as, of course, cycling teams on the men's and the women's side. Now, one of the things I like about Precision Fuel and Hydration is even after long days hiking or riding, I can still keep consuming it because, as their CEO says, it is inoffensive. The taste is inoffensive to consume, 10, 12, 14 hours later. Unlike some gels and some things like that where it just tastes too sweet or doesn't taste right or whatever the case is, that's not the case here. The other favorite feature I've got from Precision Fuel and Hydration is the fact that you can call up one of their sports scientists and have essentially like a 20-minute Zoom call and walk through your particular training and racing goals, and they'll give you a bit of a nutrition plan as well as the products that'll fit for those particular goals. Now, all their products are Informed Sport certified, all are 2-to-1 glucose fructose, all are vegan, all contain no artificial ingredients, and as I said before, they are totally edible after long days in the saddle or out on the trail. You can visit the link in the description down below to save 15% off your first order, or the coupon code that you see on the screen right there. Thanks again, Precision Fuel and Hydration, for sponsoring this episode and being precise, which is something that this watch tends to struggle with a little bit. So what were you seeing in your results?
From the GPS side of things, and I'll let you speak about your results here too, and make sure to check out our reviews of this too. But on the GPS side of things, fine-ish for the most part for the total distances and whatnot that I collected. I didn't see anything that was like way off necessarily. The finer detail the GPS tracks basically is, for my results, as soon as you go high speed, it kind of goes out the window. And then there's some other like quirks with the altitude that's being reported on this too, and I'll save that for you need to go check out my review for that one. So yeah,
interesting. Yeah, for me, altitude was actually good, but my GPS has been, all I would say is like every track is like saying plus or minus 20 meters, meaning like where you are plus or minus 20 meters. And that may not sound like a big deal if you don't know GPS watches, but that's pretty bad for GPS watches. And like this thing did not meet a corner that it didn't like to miss. Like every corner on every turn, it's like, oh, back there, never mind. It's like the old Apple Watch Mario Karting, right? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and totally.
It's just bad. And like every straightaway, it's always offset from every other watch out there. Like this, I feel like it was better that you told it to stay off the track and it found the off the track part. Like if you had it be on a track, it just couldn't do it.
And what Ray's referring to there in terms of the Mario Karting thing is that, imagine a drift car, like a drifting car, like going into a corner, and instead of like actually like, turning in the corner, a drift car would basically like keep on sliding and sliding and sliding like past the corner and then get back on track. And that's kind of what happens with this, where it's not pulling the GPS frequent enough. You're going at a high speed, and as soon as you start to turn, well, like the GPS is still like over here, and it's like it's not really catching up basically. So that's kind of what's going on there. Now, I mean, did that actually translate?
Are you implying that our audience does not know what Mario Karting is? That they're that young? That they are not a generation of Mario Kart and Nintendo 64 and everything else?
I am providing another example. We have a broad range down there. So anyways, yeah, drop a comment if you understand Mario Kart or you understand drifting, like or if there's another example.
Super Mario Kart was originally released in 1992. That was
and I guess in all fairness, that would even apply for a very young generation right now, considering I think Mario Kart's on the Switch and stuff like that too.
Yeah,
so,
I think they must know.
All right, we are diverting like completely, just like the GPS tracks on this. So, anyways,
so heart rate.
So yeah, heart rate. Heart rate. It was interesting. The first test I did on this was an indoor ride with some pretty sharp intervals on it. I was like, wow, that's pretty good. That was kind of the end of that, I think, for the most part. So basically what I found is that I do have some good results on here. With heart rate testing, it's certainly not like one or two activities and then you're just like, all right, well, that's the results I have from it. So I definitely, and both of us have multiple tests on this, like, because we've been wearing it for a couple of weeks. But it's really seeing those trends over time and like what's consistent or not. And basically from my tests, it was that when it did veer off, it veered off for a while. And it took a while for it to actually get back on track. And all watches can go for a trip for a little while, but I think it's important that a watch can veer off but can come back. So anyways, what were your results on that?
Mine were just meh. Meaning like I didn't have any massive failures for the most part. I had, outdoor cycling, massive failures across the board. Like just, like double the heart rate sort of failures, just way, way off for long periods of time. I'm not talking like a minute or two or like talk 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes at a time. But for running outdoors, to me, it just wobbled a lot, right? So like if the heart rate, if I was on a steady state run, all the other devices were at 160 plus or minus 1 or 2, this would every once in a while be like, 167, 168, 154, like just, it was just kind of like drunk uncle down the street in heart rate. And the same with the indoor cycling too. I saw a couple scenarios where it just wobbles, right? And I've seen that on some of other Polar's recent watches as well, despite this having actually a different optical heart rate sensor, one of their older optical heart rate sensors versus their newest Gen 1, but it's just not great. And I think the challenge I have with this is that if I look at something like I have here on my wrist, the Garmin Instinct E, right, which is the watch that no one should realistically ever buy. But if they were to buy this watch, I went out and I just got great optical heart rate as well as great GPS performance with a single band GPS on this watch that is more or less the same price budget category as this thing here. It just obviously looks a little different, but that same kind of Casio style. And to me, whatever Polar's doing on both the heart rate sensor side and well as the GPS side is just not good. Like, I don't know how else to phrase it than that. And I think I kind of ended my review with, if you don't really care about heart rate accuracy, you don't really care about GPS accuracy, you don't really care about decent battery life and always on anyways, you don't really care about getting future firm weights that are meaningful, then this is a great watch for $249, right? But I don't know.
That's literally exactly how I ended my review.
That's
too.
awesome.
Yeah, totally.
We haven't seen each other's reviews yet. We haven't hit publish yet, so we don't know.
No. Again, like that's where I'm curious about the actual audience of who's actually attracted to this watch and what they care about. So it's like if you care about a great looking watch that has one of the best utility features on a watch, being a flashlight at a crazy good price, and you're like, you want to track your workouts and stuff like that, as long as you don't care too much about the training related data, then it's probably fine. But if you care at all about your training related data, there's a lot of other options, like the watch that you're currently wearing right now.
Don't buy this watch, really. No, just go get an Instinct 2 and call it done. I'm talking about the Instinct for those on listening on the phone or listening on the phone, listening on the on a podcast. I'm holding up the Instinct E on my other wrist. Do not buy this watch. This is like the weirdest bastardization of Garmin watches out there. Go and buy an Instinct 2 on sale for even cheaper than this and be done with it. But your point is valid, right? Your point is that if you don't care about that other stuff, this is that same style. And if you do care about accuracy, then go get a Coros Nomad.
Well, and here's the thing. I believe there's plenty of people that seriously, quite frankly, don't care about accuracy. It's like I have friends who are very serious trail runners and and they have just like an Apple Watch, and I'm not trying to diss on an Apple Watch here. I'm just saying, like, they have like an Apple Watch that they'll wear just like super loose. Because it's super loose, the heart rate's going to be like all over the map on their activity, but they don't care. It's like they're just like they're out there to trail run, and they don't want to have it lose GPS or anything like that. Right. But they want to be able to track their run and show it off on Strava, and that's all they want. So I think there is that audience out there for sure.
Totally. And I think I completely agree. That audience is very valid and does very much exist, that don't really care about accuracy and health metrics and stuff like that. My challenge there with Polar in particular is that there isn't the draw of all of the other general stuff within their platform, right? Like if we look at the software side, as we talked about, it's super dated, right? So to me, that's where that theory falls apart, right? And I think we've seen some ideas of what Polar wants to get their software to in the future. But having seen the midpoint right now, I'm not convinced the endpoint is where we all think it is, right? And so that's where I feel like in the case of some of those other companies out there that you say, you know what, I don't really care about accuracy. I don't care about this and that. I just want like a lifestyle watch. That watch still has the back end of everything else to kind of pull it along, versus this, I feel like lacks that. And I know this is something that like Polar fans have been saying for years, that the software platform is just really behind the scenes or behind the times now. And yeah, it's tough.
Well, and I think what Ray is referring to there is the actual app experience. So basically the Polar Flow app. And with this particular watch, you wouldn't necessarily have to use that app all that much. I mean, you need to use it to get updates and to look into your data with a little bit more detail. But this is where I loop back, see what I did there, to the Polar Loop, and how that was a huge missed opportunity with the Polar Loop. Because with the Polar Loop, well, that's a screenless wearable where you can't see any of your data on the device itself, and you have to use the app to do so. And you're going to be living within that app to see anything. And the fact that they didn't update the app to basically be up to standards to some of the other apps out there when that first launched, they lost a big audience, I believe. And you can look at the forums on Reddit, in terms of the feedback on that, and it's not just our opinion. It's it's the opinion of a lot of people out there who bought the Loop. And that's where it's kind of interesting with this device, where you wouldn't necessarily have to use the app in a super meaningful way if you don't really want to look at that data, but it could be another potential missed opportunity for Polar on this device here too.
The thing is, at the end of the day, is that when we first heard about this device, I was legit excited about it, because I was like, you know what, this looks great on paper, right? It's $249. It's got a flashlight. It looks like a little Casio Instinct thing, and it's got, in theory, all of the Polar platform behind it. I was there for it, and then as I started using it day in and day out, I wasn't like upset with it. I was just disappointed it fell so far short, right? It's like the whole I'm not angry with you. I'm just disappointed, right? And that's what this comes down to. Like, I thought they would stick the landing on this. And I think if it had been spot on accurate, right, and if it had some other new features to demonstrate to me that Polar is committed to continuing to release new features, right, compared to their existing watches, then that would have been another thing. And if it, like all these little things, if the app had functioned better, more feature, I don't know, like I just felt like it all kind of fell flat to me. Like I feel like they put out this watch without really thinking about, is it ready yet or whatever.
I'm very much on the same page for you, with you there, where it's hard to not be excited about this watch. Again, considering the three, big ticket items, the style, the flashlight, and the price. I mean, just awesome. Seriously, so awesome on those three fronts. But it's like those other things, they didn't perform well enough for me where I feel like great about recommending it. I think that's kind of what it is overall.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like if someone comes to me and like, oh, do I get this or do I get a prior generation Garmin Instinct or an Amazfit watch, right, that may not look like this exactly but has a gazillion more features and costs half as much? To me, the answers are obvious, right? Like, go that direction. You're going to get a better experience, and you're going to get two companies that at least are investing in the software side of things. In the case of an older Instinct, you're not going to get any new features, but it's already got way more features than this does anyway, so whatever. And in the case of Amazfit, probably the same. You're probably not going to get new features for, some of those watches anyways, but those watches are so incredibly full featured with offline maps and all that kind of stuff that it's like, you've got what you need. So yeah,
So you purchased yours and I purchased mine as well. So, the retail price on this is $250 US, but both of us actually used a coupon. So I mean, so $250 again, $250. I think it's still an awesome price, but
sure, totally.
We both got ours for $225. So does that change your mind at all? Like in terms of
not really, because like an Instinct 2 is like what, $160 these days, like something like that, $170 most of the time. And then an Amazfit's, depending on which of the 98 different Amazfit models you want to choose from, they're roughly between like $110 for some of them, and then all the way up to $200. Well, up to the T-Rex series is more with the flashlights, right? So if you want a flashlight, you got to pay more. But if you can set aside the flashlight side of it, then amazed that there's a gazillion options that are sub $200 and have a gazillion more features that work better, that are more accurate, that all that kind of stuff. So to me, the $225 versus $249, that was the like, it's a timeshare sale thing, right? Like they got you to the resort and then on this promise, and then you found out later on it wasn't what you thought it was. So yeah.
And I would say with the Polar Loop, that device, I don't want to say saved, but I mean, there's a lot of things that can be saved with the Polar Loop, just because it's all really on the hardware, or I'm sorry, on the app side of things. Like that can be updated, and the Polar Loop still has a lot of potential to be a great device for a lot of people. Like I didn't find the accuracy like to be all that. I thought it was fine, fine-ish for the most part on the Loop, especially if you wear it on the arm. But yeah, with this, updating the app would certainly help this, but the accuracy is like,
no, it's just not there.
So yeah. So anyways, be curious if any of you out there have this device and have been using it, and definitely leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. But yeah, so that's the Street X. Again, like lots of potential, but man.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks again for listening to this episode. You can find us on Spotify. We're at the bottom of the list.
What are we talking about? What are we talking about the next episode?
Next time. Oh, we have so many options, folks. There's so many options. You've heard of none of them, so it's great. it'll be good times.
I think one of the options is something that you have heard about already. So the Zwift and Ruby, Zwift and Ruby thing, yeah, because that one's pretty spicy. So my theory, and let us all know about your thoughts about this. So there's a couple different strategies with us putting out podcasts. So we could film the podcast the day of something, being announced or released or something like that. But we could wait a couple days or more to get, a little bit more like the reactions from everyone out there. I personally like the reactions thing. Like I like to see everyone else's opinions, and I think it's cool to kind of react to a lot of those. So I don't know. Yeah. Definitely let us all know your thoughts about what you would like to see from us there. So, and again, we're trying to keep these episodes a lot shorter and hopefully more frequent too.
Yep, exactly. Shorter means more frequent. It's a simple thing in our world. So again, you can leave those comments on YouTube. There we go. See, you can leave them on YouTube, where you can watch the video or listen to us on YouTube Music. You can also hear us on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify.
All right. Thanks again for tuning in, everyone, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thanks all.